Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Veil, a show that provides insight into the world of weddings. I'm your host, Keith Willard. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about South Asian and Indian weddings, and our guest today is an expert in those areas. Not only has, I'm going to mispronounce her name, Ayesha Hakki, not only is she an amazing producer and planner of weddings, she actually started a magazine called BB Bridal Magazine that focuses on South Asian and Indian weddings. She has been on Nightline. She has been part of, the list of television programs and media outlet that she has been a part of is crazy. So before I talk myself into circles, let me bring her on. Welcome to the show. And I knew I was going to.
You got my name completely right. In fact, I was applauding. I don't know if you saw that.
Seriously, but South Asian and Indian weddings for some reason has this huge resurgence in kind of popularity, and especially in publicity, right?
Yes.
For weddings that are being published. And of course, the rich cultures and colors don't hurt because, we love that kind of stuff as planners because it gives us something to. But it's also a very, if you don't have the experience, saying that you plan Indian weddings is not something you should just lightly say.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. There's a lot of, there's like the Indian wedding, but then there's all these like subcultures, and you kind of have to know a little bit about I'd say about 15 to 20 different cultures because each one does things a little differently.
Right.
But the party is always, fun. There's a lot of people and a lot of great music.
I know, but 20 subcultures. Oh my God. I don't even know. How do you, first of all, I'm assuming that you meet with the client and then you kind of figure out what the subculture is and then go from there. But, did you also have a resurgence in the amount of events that you were doing? Because, for a year of COVID, we had nothing. And then all of a sudden, all those weddings got pushed.
Yeah.
Were you dealing with the same issues that all of us were, like, especially in the Indians and in the Indian cultures?
So a couple things happened. During COVID, these weddings became like 10 people, 20 people, 30 people.
Right.
But you kind of still need to have like a lot of the structure, like the mandup, which is what you get married, like the huppah. You still kind of need that. And people were still like, okay, we're going to photograph it. We're going to, live stream it, back to India or to around the country.
Right.
So there was still that element of like pageantry, although it was like much smaller. But what's happening now is a lot of the people who push their weddings, like in the whole industry, they're all getting married now. Plus, the people who had small weddings are having bigger weddings now. Right. So there's like, I'm getting inquiries for weddings on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and when the wedding is like 3 days long, you're like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Oh, okay, I can make that work. I don't know about your guests who are going to be working and then coming afterwards, but I can make it work.
Wow. And by the way, your microphone on your blouse is popping a little bit. So just be a little careful there. Cause when you,
my accessory, darling.
It's popping anyway. So, but okay. So weddings Indian weddings are 3 days.
3 days. Yeah.
Holy moly. That's a lot of planning to do. Normally, and that's not even including some of like the rehearsal dinners and stuff, or is that included in those 3 days?
So for the main guests, the wedding could be like a month long, because you have all these days sort of leading up to it, engagements, which, our engagements are a little bit different. Right. You get engaged, officially with the priest and everything. And then you'll have like what we call rehearsal dinners is actually people getting together to sing and dance. Right. Because you have competitions with the other side to see who's going to be the better party. And then you're going to, like win the wedding, quote unquote. Right. So there's like a lot of like family events that happen. But for the actual, like for all the guests, it's usually like between 2 and 3 days, but it's 3 ceremonies at the minimum. So the first one is the mehndi, which is the day they put up the henna on their hands. You can also have what's called the sangeet, which is when people sing, they sing and they dance. Right. And which is the best part of the wedding. It's really, really fun. And then you have the ceremony,
Right.
which would probably be in the morning of the reception, and the ceremony, followed by lunch, and then you have the reception in the evening,
Wow.
and then some people go on and they have a brunch, and a welcome event the following day. So it can get pretty hectic, but you get to really become close to the families and the couple, and that's like the best part.
That's incredible, because I
Yeah.
actually was talking to a planner, and she does weddings actually in India, and she said sometimes my weddings are in football fields,
Oh
like
yeah,
like
totally.
soccer statements,
Like
thousands
thousand
of people.
people, yeah.
And I
So it's a cultural thing.
wow,
There's a billion of us on the planet, so we kind of have like big networks. But it's a cultural thing too. It's like if somebody lives in your village or in
right,
your neighborhood or in your building or whatever, you have to invite them to the wedding, because to not invite them is
right.
considered an insult. And then they'll probably come and bring. It's different. Like weddings
Crazy,
back home are not like here, where you're paying per person. Over
right?
there you've got like a big old tent and like lavish food and lavish entertainment, and the more you can share, the more auspicious it's supposed to be. So
It's I mean, and and so in the United States, I've done a handful of Indian weddings. This is not my forte. It's not my, I do my best, and
we
I walk into my meetings with my clients and I say, look, this is not, I can produce a beautiful event, but you're
yeah.
gonna have to help me and walk me through some of the traditions and things that you need. And so one of the things that was really interesting to me is that the ceremony and the reception were separate events.
Yep.
And so the ceremony being in the morning, and sometimes not all the same people are invited to each
Yep.
of the events.
Yep. Yep. That's
I
why when we do our invitations, we have like little inserts, so you can like
Yeah,
pick and choose who's going to be invited to what. So
that's just crazy. I mean, what do you think is the most misconceived thing when people think about Indian and South Asian weddings? What is the first major mistake you think most planners make
so
when it
if you're not from you know, or familiar with that part of the world. You don't have to be from there, but familiar with that part of the world. One
right?
of the biggest mistakes that people make is to make it look like a big Bollywood event, right? So it used to be like that. I mean, there was a time where we wanted it to be really traditional and really over the top and blah 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 blah. But now, like especially here in the U.S. Most of us are more Americanized, especially like the people getting married today. So
Yeah,
they want a little bit of a fusion of this. So all those vivid and loud colors are still there, but a lot of that has become a little bit more old school, and people are really experimenting with, what they see on Instagram, what they see on Pinterest, and how can I make that part of my wedding? So
right.
yeah.
Well, and I found it interesting that there are MCs that specialize, that go from wedding to wedding, family to family, and they're like almost stars in their own
Yeah,
right.
they are. They
People get
really are. Yeah.
hardcore about who they're going to have MC their event and do their wedding, because it's two separate things. There's somebody explaining it and talking to the audience, and yet there's also, it seemed to be a priest, or what do you actually call it,
The pundit.
the
Oh, it,
pundit,
it depends. I mean, an imam for the Muslim weddings, a pundit for the Hindu weddings, a
right?
priest for the Christian,
Oh my
a
goodness.
rabbi for the Jewish. We got every religion, babe. We got every religion.
Here we've only been talking for like 8 minutes, and I'm already kind of confused, because holy moly, you've already spoken about a million different things that I don't think a lot of people really understand, or have a misconceived idea, because they think about it in the movies, the Bollywood
Yeah,
movies, right? They think everybody's like dancing into the ceremony. it's,
kinda.
it's not quite like that. So if you're starting to plan a wedding, an Indian wedding, where do you start? Where do you start when you're meeting with a client?
So when I meet with a client, what I like to do, which sets me apart from most people, is I try to tell stories through the
Right.
wedding. If
Yeah.
your guests are going to be there for 3 days, let's give them an experience. Let's teach them something about you, and let's give them a feel like a love fest. Let them learn about you and learn what you like and what you don't like, and then let's interweave that with all the cultures and traditions of your family, because every family kind of has their own thing.
Right.
So the first thing I do is really I just start to get to know them, like ask them a ton of questions. Where are they from? What part? Are you Gujarati? Are you Sindhi? Are you Sikh? Are you Hindu? What are you? And then from there, how traditional do you want to go? Because, some ceremonies can last like 2 hours if you do everything that is. And some people are like, let's get it done in half an hour. Just give me the basics. Yeah. So it's trying to figure out like how much, do they really want, and
Right.
how much of their American side they want to include in as well. So it's just like a little bit of a delicate balance of figuring out, what experience are you giving your guests, and then how can we take that and then put it into like the details of the wedding. So yeah, lots of questions.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It's that, and they're not all 3 days, right? Because
Yeah,
there are some Americanized
yeah,
versions where
yeah,
they, turn it to 2 days or just the one day.
yeah.
And I mean, and sometimes they're very traditional as far as like I did a mixed wedding where he was Indian, she was Australian, and so it was really funny to watch the father of the bride wash the groom's feet.
Yeah.
I mean, his face was iconic because they didn't warn him.
It's like, wait, I got to do what?
Yeah, he's like, I have to wash what? I'm washing, and I think that's another part of it, is that sometimes when you're in the mix, sometimes you
Yeah,
forget to explain some of the traditions that are going to happen for those that are on the American side or have not been involved in an
yeah,
Indian wedding.
yeah.
So is there like a program, or like, how did you, I mean, you grew up in the culture? I didn't want to make
I mean,
assumptions.
I'm from there. I grew up over here, but
Right.
the culture is so much a part of who we are, in terms of what you eat and like the events that you go to and stuff. So it's you can't really like separate yourself out from the culture. You're kind of in it. Yeah.
And then did your family think you were crazy? They're like, "Oh, you're gonna plan what?" No.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
it's it's how I started my journey in this world. Like I had no idea.
right.
I wanted to start a magazine. I always knew from when I was like 13 years old that I wanted to be, I wanted a magazine. So I went to school for journalism and visual arts, and
Wow.
I was working for magazines, and then I got married,
Yeah.
which is not no longer the case. But anyways, so
First time
when
is practice.
yes,
Yeah, we
exactly.
all first time is practice. We're all been there.
So, so when I was putting my wedding together, it was, I mean, just calling hotels and being like, I really need an outside caterer. And I remember one banquet manager was like, well, we don't allow that because I don't know, like, do I need a slotted spoon or do I need, a pair of tongs? I don't know how to serve that food.
Right.
And there were very few venues that actually allowed outside, like Indian catering. And
Right.
then it was like, okay, well, now that I've got the venue, how do I decorate this? Because a lot of this stuff doesn't really exist. The industry, the bridal industry was like this big, and I'm
Right.
not kidding when I say it was this big.
Right.
And so we had this whole binder of information, and my partners in the magazine, all three of us were like, well, we should do something about this. So we put a business plan together. We launched this magazine, and by our first issue, we got corporate sponsorship, and by our second issue, we got picked up by this distributor that took us to 40 states and
God.
7 countries. So overnight, we're like, oh my God, I think we just did something that means something. And yeah, and so I mean, I don't like, not to brag.
No,
um,
brag, please brag. What, are you
well,
kidding?
I
You
think
did something amazing.
the magazine was very instrumental in defining this industry. We've worked with, there's a few pioneers that
Right.
have been around. So we were all kind of starting around the same time. We all sort of developed this industry together, and then like a child, you like set it off and fly free, young bird.
Right.
It's
Right.
now like soaring and doing all these amazing things. And the magazine, BB magazine, we were in print for 18 years. And then, a few years ago, we decided to, make everything online. So we do, everything's on bbmagazine.com. And we basically, a lot of the things that we've learned is what, to come back to your earlier question, what do people misconceive as an Indian wedding?
Right.
It's, the industry is now 25 years old, I would say, the Indian wedding industry. And
Right.
so it's evolved. I mean, it started off as being very traditional because you couldn't find that here. And so you wanted it. So then it just like became traditional, and then just vomited traditional. And then after that, it like swung the other way and went completely modern. And now
Right.
it's like coming back to like a bit of a fusion. But as you know, they went from these small little things to now they're like massive productions with sound, lighting, video production, video
Yeah.
walls, fireworks, cold sparklers. I mean, you name it, it's in there. It's helicopters, elephants in Times Square. I mean, I've seen a lot in my life.
But that's so cool. But do you find that, because I know that one of the things that I find in some of my weddings is that they try to outdo each other because they've been invited to each other's weddings. And so, there is that little part of a bride says, I don't want somebody copying my wedding. Actually, I just did an article where they were talking about, can you copy somebody's wedding? And, the answer is no, you really can't ever copy somebody's wedding 100%. Too many other factors.
Yeah.
But do you find that because if you have to invite everybody that's in your village or your area, right? Or because as you said earlier, it comes across as a bad thing, do then people then compete to have the next coolest thing, the next amazing visual?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a universal thing. I think all brides want to put their stamp on the wedding. They want it to be very much about them and their choices and whatever. And yes, there is a lot, and I'm sure you must run into this as well. Everybody's showing you pictures they saw on Instagram and or on Pinterest or something they saw on TikTok.
Shoot me now.
Exactly. So what I try to tell them is like, okay, that's great. Somebody's done that. Now let's try to take that and make it your own. Like if I see another champagne wall.
Oh no! I actually had a Cinderella shot, like a 20-foot Cinderella replica where they did shots down. Oh, never mind. It was a whole. Anyway, but I mean but again, you had already talked about telling a story, so I'm assuming that helps in providing, making it different because everybody's story is different.
Yeah. So that's where, I pull those details out and say, okay, how much of your story can we put in this without it being hokey? I mean, you want to make sure that it's very elegant and creative and that the idea works,
Right.
So yeah, when I can pull like details from whatever part of their story, that's what gives my events that extra edge. Yeah, and it helps to have clients that are
published
very
a magazine. Wait, did you publish the magazine first and then start planning?
Yeah. So we started this magazine, and what happened is that through the magazine we started throwing events. So my very first event that I threw was our launch party, which we threw in New York City.
Right.
And we think about it now. It's like, oh my God, we had balls. We called every VIP person, every actor, every this, and because it was new and nobody like the whole the community was really starting to sort of recognize itself. Right. They all showed up. And here the three of us, we're all kind of like in our late 20s. We're like, okay, well, now we're going to put together this fashion show for all these high movers. And we invited the ambassadors and we invited all this press. And we're like, we did it.
No pressure.
But the thing is, back then we were so excited.
Yeah.
There was no pressure. We were just like, let's just do this. It's going to be fun.
Youth.
Youth. A little bit of stupidity. So through that, we started throwing a lot of parties for the magazine. So we would throw 700 person, black tie New Year's Eve parties.
Wow.
Again, just doing it. And then people started asking me like, hey, can you do my wedding? Okay, yeah, I can. And then my clients started saying, hey, we have a launch product. Can you help us this? I mean, I've done fashion shows for New York Fashion Week, which was, like, no, that was pressure. When you have like a front row of celebrities and it's just like, okay, well, let's just see what we can do here.
Wow.
So I got to do a lot of different things, and I just really, really like, I think it just really come down to, I love weddings. I love the pageantry, the
Mhm.
tradition. I mean, even now, I've been to hundreds and hundreds of weddings, but every time I see the bride walking down out, these like, do, 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 do,
I know, isn't that
once or
amazing?
twice.
Oh my God. It's one of those things that every single time it gets me.
Yeah.
Gets me every time. It's
And
the craziest
it's the
moment.
craziest moment, and you're like, oh my god, this person is like making this massive commitment, and oh my god, I hope the napkins are folded properly because they deserve it. Damn it, they deserve it.
So
So
you went,
yeah.
but I mean, you're running a magazine, you're producing a magazine, and then you're saying, yes, I can plan multi-day events. Why not?
Team.
I was about to
Team.
say,
Everything is about having the right team in place, and I think the one person, Colin Cowie, is probably one of the smartest businessmen that I know.
yeah,
I've met him a few times, yeah, and he's,
it's
every time I
amazing.
hear him speak, he always talks about teamwork, having the right team in place, educating them, putting processes in place, so that
Yep.
way you don't have to be there for the day to day, right? You can let your people like run with it. And
Right.
then the other thing that he turned me on to, this book called, which is right here on my bookshelf, it's called Blue Ocean Strategy. And basically, what it talks about is developing yourself as a brand or your company or whatever, where
Right.
you're not competing in the red, shark infested waters where everybody's trying to grab the same pie. You're
Right.
sailing in a blue ocean where you've created something so special that there's nobody around you, and you're able to grow and thrive. And it's a work in progress. It's like, the minute you create something, people come, then you have to move on to the next. But those, just those two things that he talks about really sort of made me think about, like, okay, if I want this business to be successful, yes, customer service, yes, knowing what you're doing, yes, having a good track record, but developing something where I have a team that can run it. So I have a team in New York, I have one now in Miami, I
Right.
have a team in Houston. They take care of a lot of what needs to be done, and I just sort of oversee it, which makes it a lot easier to put your hands in a couple different pots.
It's amazing because we had probably a year ago or so, we had a guest on, and we were talking about the difference between having a brand versus being intimate, right? What kind of company do you want? What kind
Yeah.
of company? And are you a manager of other people, or do you want to be the person that is involved in every step of
Yeah.
the way?
Yeah.
And either is great, right? But you have to
Oh
figure out
yeah.
who you are as an owner, you know.
Yeah.
And Colin and you obviously both have that very, like, I'm going to have my teams in place, and I can then oversee and then try all sorts of new things and get our name out there in a whole different way of being that I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to do just on my own.
So, like, just a small example of that is, I I have American planners that hire me to consult on the Indian side of their weddings.
Right.
So, for example, I have a wedding in New York in July where it's an American company who's doing all the production and everything, but they needed somebody to help with all the Indian, because it's an Indian wedding, the
Right.
Indian-esque stuff. So they hired me on as a consultant.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, this is, I can do this because of the fact that, like, I do know what I'm doing. I know how to get all this stuff, and how to, like, implement all this stuff. But it's a lot of it is what my, what I'm trying to do with my company is, like, grow it so that way things are sort of in place, whatever. Am I the best at it? Absolutely not. I'm just one day at a time, learning and, growing just like the rest of us. But the other thing that I do with my team is, I tried, if I won't do a job, I'm not going to ask somebody else to do it. So
Right.
there'll be times where I'll be like, ironing napkins and whatever, and then I'll hand it off to someone, because I want my team to know that, what, when you need to really get in there and get something done, it's not about who you are, whatever. It's, let's just get this done because our client is asking for it. So I try to keep my
Right.
hands a little dirty, but then also, like, see the bigger picture, so that way I can guide, the ship to where it's going.
Okay, so here you are. One of the things that I kind of realized here, especially in South Florida, is finding materials that will, or people that specialize in Indian weddings or South Asian weddings, especially like when you're talking about the hand painting.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of people
Oh, you'd be
that do it.
surprised. Gee.
Really?
Oh, you would be so surprised. I moved here during the pandemic because I wanted to try a new life.
Right.
And, it's so gorgeous down here. So it's like, okay, this is easy.
Yep.
And the first thing I did, because, it was COVID, I had a lot of time on my hands, is I started reaching out to vendors who do South Asian weddings. And through one, through another, and plus, I haven't, like we're all kind of connected. So somebody
Right.
would refer. So just getting to know who they are and everything. So there is that part that, yes, those vendors do exist.
Right.
And then the second part of it is knowing where to bring in a non-South Asian vendor, because you
Yeah.
want that fusion look, or you want something that's not like been done before. So a lot of times, like, I'll work with an Indian decorator but bring in an American florist, because the two, when they combine, it's spectacular.
Right.
So yeah, it exists. You need to tap into it. But yeah, that whole network exists. I mean, there's guys here that like specialize. Their full business is to tie turbans. That is
Really?
all they do.
Really?
Tie turbans, and they are booked.
Well, and actually, I was doing an African wedding, and the headdress for the ladies, it's very specific kind of material that has to be used, and they're gorgeous headpieces.
Yeah.
And it took me months to find somebody that was available. And it was like a year out, and it took me months to find somebody that was available. And thank God she was amazing. Thank God, because that would have been horrific if, here we are 8 months later, and it would have been awful.
Let me try my hand at that.
Oh yeah,
I got a couple safety pins. I'm good.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
I watched a YouTube video. I can do this.
I planned my sister's wedding. I can do this. But but it is a very specialized talent in some of these things, and I think that's another thing that, as event planners, wedding planners out there that have been tasked to do an Indian wedding or South Asian wedding, that they don't really understand at the beginning. I mean, it's one of those things that I tell people all the time. I'm a great fit for a lot of people, but not everybody.
Yeah.
And and I really would hope that planners that are just beginning have the ability to say no.
Yeah. There's
I mean, how do you?
It's a special day. You don't want to mess with somebody's special day unless you do something where you partner up with someone who knows. So you could plan it. Planning is planning. It's eat with the right fork. Cut with the eat with the left fork, cut with the right knife.
Right.
Yeah. What? L?
I know, I do the same thing. Oh my God, when I set up a table, I always get the silverware reversed.
I know.
It drives my staff crazy because they're like, "You're the planner. Why?" And I'm like, I for some reason, I'm dyslexic when it comes to setting a table. But what would you say for a planner that's just beginning or that wants to get into this industry? What is a recommendation for them as far as figuring out, like, do they go to work for somebody that is specialized in this field? I mean, where do you start?
I would say shadow somebody. Volunteer time, and just say, I want to, just follow you around. I'll help you out, whatever. You really need to learn, what's happening, and you need to sort of, take a deep dive into the cultural parts of it and figure out, like, if it's a Muslim wedding, what's it going to look like? If it's a Gujarati wedding, what's it going to look like? If it's a Sikh Punjabi versus a Hindu Punjabi, what's it going to look like? So you kind of need to know, like, those details, and you can, you can read about it all you want, but everything is not the same as being there, because a lot of the stuff, I'm always looking online, when I have to, do a wedding. It's like, okay, let me go deep into it. Now I have notes and everything. And, but it's like, okay, let me just remember what's this. A lot of the stuff that people did in the past, they don't do now. And you kind of need to know that. So if you're starting in the industry, in the South Asian industry, the very first thing is, shadow someone, or if you can't do that, then choose your vendors who know what they're doing. Choose a venue that has
Mhm.
done Indian weddings. Choose a decorator that knows Indian weddings, photo, video, everything. Choose someone who's already done it, because
Yeah.
that's going to take a lot of the pressure off. And you can ask them questions like, okay, well, what happens after they walk around the fire 7 times? Now what?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I come from the hotel side, and I remember the very first time I booked an Indian wedding,
You're at the
and
Ritz-Carlton, right?
yeah, well,
That's a favorite for our
oh
Indian
my
wedding.
god, oh my god, but it was crazy because I needed to have more information about what to book for
Yeah,
them,
yeah,
because you need to know like all the pieces and processes and stuff, because
yeah,
many times people just assume that they're like,
yeah,
oh, the Ritz-Carlton does Indian weddings, so obviously the person that I'm talking to knows what we should be doing or utilizing in the spaces that,
yeah.
and I'm really gonna screw this up. And I really did. I thought I am gonna F the hell out of this up. And it took a lot of help from my people to say, no,
Yeah,
no, no, not that. Don't do this. Oh my God, what are you doing? Kind of thing.
yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
do you find yourself having to teach other people, like
Oh,
vendors that,
yeah,
that,
all
that
the
maybe the
time.
client hired without letting you know, which happens?
No, I mean, like I said, I get asked to consult all the time. I mean, like hotels will call me and be like, "Hey, we have a wedding camp coming up. Can you walk us through?" I have I've created notes, stuff that we published in the magazine. I have all of that, in a nice little document, so I can say, "All right, this is what you're gonna need. This is what you're gonna do." So yeah, I do consult, with people who are looking to do an Indian wedding that don't necessarily know all the nuances.
Right.
It's worth it for someone. So Indian weddings, it's no secret. 3 days of functions, a guest list that's anywhere between 300 and 500 people. Post COVID, it's a little bit less now, but still,
Yeah, I was
um,
about to say, I'm
yeah,
assuming COVID had an effect.
a tiny effect. I have a wedding. My wedding in 2 weeks it was 450 people,
Yeah.
and now I think it's topping off at 350, but it's still a lot of people inside of a room.
Right.
So had it not been COVID, that number would have gone up. Because it's COVID, the numbers are starting to go down. So what that means is that's a lot of that's not to be crass, but
No, be
it's a
crass.
lot of money. You're going to
Yeah.
make a lot of money
Yeah.
off of an Indian wedding, because you have 3 events. You just
Right.
add it all up, with these large guest lists and these productions where it's not just let's put an arbor and some fabric. It's big, staging and lighting and sound cues and all that stuff. So
Well,
yes, it's worth it to get into it, but you should, if you have any questions or any
right.
doubts or any hesitation, bring someone in who knows what they're talking about.
Well, and so let's talk about some preconceived ideas that are in the industry, because when we come from this, it is said that Indians are the best negotiators
Oh yeah.
on the planet.
Yeah. And it's so funny you say that, because I had this conversation with someone literally like 3 days ago. Okay.
They are. They
So
are the best
yeah, yes.
negotiators. You do not walk into a discussion not knowing your stuff,
Oh
because
yeah, because so we're not cheap. We're definitely not cheap.
nope.
Indian Americans, South Asian Americans are, one of the more affluent, groups in the country. So we have
Yeah.
the money.
Right.
But it's in our culture to also get the best deal. You don't become rich by just throwing your money around. You learn how to get value for your dollar.
Yes.
So if you don't understand that, you're going to get very frazzled in the first conversation, and it's just going to set a bad tone. You need to know that and it's with any wise consumer.
Yeah.
You have
100%.
to go in there and say, okay, when I negotiate a contract, I want to make sure I'm getting all the best services that are going to be relevant to my event, and not pay for stuff that I'm not really going to need.
I agree.
So a lot of times, even when I negotiate for my clients, it's the same way. It's like I want to make sure that, I was just in a negotiation for a wedding that's happening in December, where they're bringing in outside catering, and the hotel was charging $45 per person. It's in another state. It's not in Miami.
Right, right.
They're charging $45 per person. And so I was just like, well, wait a second, we don't really need all of the things that you're charging. So we were able to negotiate that down to 40.
Right.
Okay, $5 makes a difference, because I said, look, it's not like we're not going to take that money. That $5 is a 400 person guest
It's
count.
a big difference. It's a big difference. Plus,
we're going to take that money and we're going to throw it into, let's just buy some desserts from you. Let's buy some, appetizers from you. It's not like you're not going to get the money. We're just going to get some value out of it. So that's what, yes. Do we negotiate? Yes. Do some people take it far? Sure. Yeah. Do some people not take it far? Sure. There's always a happy medium. But if you've ever been to a market in India, you know the first price they give you is not the price.
Not the price.
You got to come. Somebody says, it's going to be $10. You're going to be like, I'll give you $3. And then you look him deep in the eye, and then he's like, all right, $7, all right, $5, done.
Well, and one of the things is that, and what I would tell new people that are into this, that came into the hotel side of it, it's like, look, they are hardcore negotiators, but they have the best intentions in the world. Yeah. It is not a personal thing. When they get kind of intense and they up in your face, it's because that's a tactic. You got to let them
exactly.
It's a tactic.
It's not everybody, but it is a cultural thing. It is something that you will see, and but then these are the people that are going to drop $100,000 at your hotel.
Oh, so my God.
It's worth the conversation.
Oh, 100%. And they're so generous afterwards. Oh my God.
I know the tips. Oh my God.
It is crazy. And so what I would tell my salespeople is like, look, find your hard line, stick to it. That's all there is to it. Find your hard line and stick to it. And once you get to that, you go, that's all I can do. And I said, and they're going to come back past you. Is that really as far as you can go? And I said, but then after the negotiations are over, it's done.
It's like they're buying you dinner. Now you're going to meet the family. Here's my brother-in-law. He brought you some stuff from India. It's a little gift. I mean, generosity is definitely in our spirit, but also, being wise about how we spend money. Because when we spend money, we spend a lot. But we're going to be very wise about how we're going to do it. And once you realize and understand that this is part of what you're going to be doing, then it just becomes like, all right, let me figure this out. This can be fun. I can do this.
Oh yeah. It's how you approach it. Yeah. The other tendency, and I think that in the events community, especially in the sales community, is that they assume that there are going to be more people that come to the event than they actually contract, and that's not the case. And I say that all the time. I'm like, it'll feel like it, but it's not true, because there's just so many people, 400 or 500 people. Coming in and out of the ballroom constantly. Because people move. They don't sit. They move constantly.
Oh yeah. I mean, everybody's kind of doing their thing, and
it's a networking event. Oh my God.
Totally. Well, it's fun. It's so much fun. You're all dressed up, and everybody's having a good time, and then the lights go down, and oh my God. And then there's like there's this one cultural sect that they party. Oh, they party. They have their Johnny Walker Black up in the
Johnny Walker Black.
And they party, and it is so much fun. When I get one of those weddings, I'm like, yes, I love it. They're hilarious.
God. Oh, and the speeches. Speeches. They put hours and weeks into perfecting the perfect speech that both gets laughter and tears from people. Oh my God. It is incredible. The passion, the joy, all of it.
Bollywood movies.
Well, actually, I have a family that's from Trinidad, and I've done probably 6 of this family's weddings so far. And I say so far because there's a couple more coming up.
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
they actually do have a competition amongst each other about who can give the best speech. right?
That's so
Who,
cool.
it's awesome. It's awesome because, and then you find yourself laughing also with them because they're so good that it doesn't matter if you know the couple or not. You're gonna love them just
Yeah, it's like, can
from
I
the
just
speech.
record that? I'm gonna save that for another day.
Oh my God, it's incredible. It's incredible. So how have weddings changed? How have South Asian Indian weddings changed over the years since 20 years ago since you first got brought
Yeah,
in the magazine?
yeah, we touched upon this earlier. I mean, they were very traditional because you couldn't get that and then you wanted it. The biggest thing I would say today is there's a lot of fusion stuff going on. So, for example, I did a wedding where we recreated the ceremony.
Right,
So it was more, like one of the grooms was Hindu, the other groom was American.
right,
So they wanted something a little bit more meaningful towards them.
right,
So we basically rewrote the ceremony, and instead of having like like there's a fire pit, whatever, we did
right,
like beautiful like antique crank table, and then we put a little tiny tabletop fire. Instead of like like you walk around the fire 7 times, they
right.
held hands and they exchanged 7 vows. That their friends got ordained for it. So it was very, very particular. And, even like the style of the mandap, because it has, 4 pillars that represent, like 4 areas. And
Right.
so we made that we made it look like, it was made out of branches, and this amazing award-winning florist in New York called Floresta, which I'm so happy to give him as much business. He's a brilliant man.
Right.
They created this beautiful, sort of arbor looking thing with, like just lanterns and potted plants on the floor, and antique. I mean, it's just stunning. Anyways, so
Right.
the point is that we made it very, very fusion, and we kind of created something very special for them. So we were part of. Okay, this is how we want the ceremony. This is how we want this. How about let's try this? Let's try this, because that takes what the original meaning is, but it makes it a little bit more, fusion. But then on the flip
Mm,
side, I've had, ceremonies that are okay. We definitely want the coconut. We definitely want, the fire and all the stuff that goes in, and the 7 steps and whatever. So there is a lot of fusion coming in. Sometimes it can be in the ceremony. Sometimes, and a lot of times, you'll see that in the reception, with the way the
right.
reception looks, with like the tablescapes, and we have a stage where the couple sit on, so what the stage and everything is going to look like.
Right.
Then of course they bring in the first dance, the cake cutting, garter toss. I've seen it all, but it's beautiful to me to see in a South Asian wedding that is so fusion, because for a person like me who was born here,
Right.
that is what I know. I don't know. Like, I feel like if I'm wearing like the traditional stuff, I feel like I'm wearing a costume, because that doesn't feel like me. But when I wear something a little fusiony, bring my American side and my South Asian side together, it feels me. And I think a lot of couples today is many of them are now born here, raised here. When
Right.
they do weddings like that, it really reflects who they are as a people, so it's I think fusion would be the one thing that is probably the overarching trend in South Asian weddings right now. I hate using the word trend, but
I know, but
direction.
and and the Western weddings is that it used to be the parents that would do a lot of the planning.
Yeah,
That there was a shift in power, so to speak, when it came to who got the final say, because it used to be the
yeah,
parents are paying for it, they get the final say. Too
yeah,
bad. And now more and more of the kids are paying for it. And so
yeah.
they're like, no, we want it this way. Do you find that there's a struggle between old and new?
Oh,
I think so.
yeah.
Okay. Ta-da.
So with most of my families, the decisions are not made by the couple or the parents. There's a group meeting of the family members. With most of my couples, so a decision that, like, okay, what color do you want the napkins?
Right.
It'll take me 2 weeks to get an answer, because they have to all discuss and come together. So the
Wow.
wedding, the part of the culture is, okay, so yes, the parents usually would pay. Now the
Right.
kids are paying, so that part is very similar. but involving people, and I think this is universal too, but involving people in the decisions of your wedding makes you feel closer as a family, right?
Right,
Which
right.
is wonderful for them. Sometimes, like the wedding's in 3 days. What color do you want the napkins?
Hold on, we
um,
got to have a family meeting. Everybody get together. All right.
yeah. So now that I know that, I try to build in that cushion. So if I know it's a decision that's going to require a family meeting, let me give them a week or two to do. So yeah, it's a cultural thing, but I mean, you gotta love it. It's so cute. It's. I love how everybody kind of gets together, and then when the wedding actually happens, everybody feels very vested in the success of the event.
And they're proud of it.
And they're proud of it because they're like, oh, I chose that, or
Yeah.
I was a part of this, or this was, people feel much more connected to the wedding. And ultimately, the wedding really is not about the bride and groom. It's about
Yeah.
everyone. You want to make people happy. Are you crying, Keith,
No,
already?
I was etching my eye.
Oh,
Sorry. No, I was
I was
actually
gonna,
I
I
was
was gonna
actually
give you that Oscar moment right
no,
now.
I actually was thinking back to one of my weddings and having that group meeting with the family. But one of the other things that came to, like, you realize, is that they are highly oh my god, what's it? Loyal, highly
Yes.
loyal. Once
Yeah.
you do a wedding and you
Oh
do it
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
everybody will come back to you.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to do it differently
Yeah,
every time, because a lot of times you are in 2 weeks. It's my third wedding with the family.
right,
And so I'm always thinking, like, what did I do in the past? How can we make it different? Even if they want the same thing, how can we make it different?
right.
And there is a lot of expectation because they're like, okay, you've done this wedding, um, we want it to be better, but we don't want it. So there's a lot of pressure on the planner to make sure it's something like unique and different and still at the same level and stuff like that. But
Right.
yeah, the loyalty is real. And you get to know the family. You become so a part of them. With any planner will say this.
Yeah.
You become so close to them that after the wedding's done, it's like, wait, I can't call you 10 times a day now. My
They
life
do.
feels strangely
Oh no,
empty.
no. They do. They still call. Doesn't matter, because somebody's getting married at some point, or they will say, "Can you believe what this other person did?" Yeah. No,
Oh
I
yeah.
I love those. I love that's it's one of my favorite things. Is that
Oh yeah.
you do become part of the family. You know,
Yeah, that is the
it.
best part of it.
I mean, it really is. And have you thought about writing a book?
I did actually, because I was publishing a magazine. I got asked to put together some sort of a coffee table book
Right.
for Indian weddings, and it was a very nice publisher. I don't think I was kind of ready at that point because if you're going to write a book, I mean, looking at like Preston Bailey and Colin and David, if they're when they put something on paper, it's like, okay, who is it, Todd Raffanelli,
Yeah.
they put something on paper, it's saying something. Okay, what can I say that says something and not it's not just whatever. So I hope so in the future. I mean, obviously publishing is in my blood.
Yeah, because you
um
talked about the fact that that is in your blood. That's what you went to school for,
yeah,
was
well, that's what
journalism.
I did for I published a magazine.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully in the future, I hope so.
Well, because you just, and I don't think we barely touched on all that goes into it. I mean, you brought up so many terms and cultures, and I mean, I was like, okay, wait, what was that? I didn't understand that. I mean, I've been taking notes because I got to go look it up afterwards. And it's kind of like somebody that uses polysyllabic words, and I'm like, okay, what is
Yes.
that? Okay, but that's the thing, is that it would be great there would be a guide of some sort that
Yeah.
we could use as event planners to say, okay, what kind of wedding are we looking at? What culture is this from?
Yeah.
What are the values and traditions that are part of that culture? Because I don't know of anything
Well,
actually out
that's
there.
what I mean, and quite honestly, BB Magazine, that's what it was all about. Like we would put, every issue we would dedicate it to a certain culture, and then we would start like, breaking down, we'd show weddings of that culture. We'd show some, customs and rituals of that culture, and then how to find things for that culture. So that's kind of how we were doing things. And yeah, I know. I mean, like I said, I have everything already on my hard drive. I could email you.
My
And
God, no.
we'll
It's
go for
crazy.
coffee and we'll talk about all the stuff.
Oh, it'll
But
be a whole day
yeah,
event. Believe me. Oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
goodness, it'll be a
yeah.
whole day event. So what's next for you? I mean, it's funny because when I read your bio, I mean, oh my goodness, I mean, you've been all over the place. You've been, you had Bravo's The Newlywed. You've been quoted in the New York Times. You've been on Nightline. By the way, how are you on Nightline?
So they actually did on we okay. So I move around a lot.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things. So we started the magazine in Houston,
Right.
and Houston was it's a very cosmopolitan city,
I
and
love Houston. I'm
so
from Texas.
oh,
Yeah.
where?
Dallas, actually. I actually grew up in Harlingen, Plano, McAllen, down South Texas,
Oh my God,
McAllen, Harlingen,
yeah,
and then moved to Plano, Arlington, Dallas, but went to Houston and Austin all the time. I
yeah.
love Houston. Was my favorite because there were no building codes. There'd be an
Oh,
office
totally.
building next to a house,
Yeah,
next to a
I've seen
restaurant,
it. Yeah, which
yeah,
is hilarious. It's
the
totally
craziest
hilarious.
thing,
Yeah.
right? So you're moving around a lot, and then
So
they got
they contacted us and they said we want to talk about South Asian culture and South Asian weddings and blah blah blah. And they dedicated a whole episode to us, and it was so.
What?
I mean, yeah. Well, the funny thing is we were just like starting out. We'd only been in business for a few years,
Right.
so we had a little office in this really nice building. And but we're like, oh my God, Nightline is coming. This office is not good enough. So we told our landlord, he was a dear man. We're
Right.
like, can we just take over the office next door so it looks like our operations are a little bit bigger? And he's like, sure, fine. So we moved everything over.
Yeah.
And then we moved our phones over so it looked like it was a working office, but the phones weren't connected to the wall. They were just sitting on the desk. So we were like, this looks great as long as no one decides to make a phone call. I mean, the producer says, hey, I need to call my office. Can I use your phone?
You're like, no, they're working on the phones. They're not even
working.
connected to the wall at the moment. Oh my God.
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
but it worked.
But it worked.
It worked.
And it was really, really nice because, sort of to see, like for me to see my culture represented in a way that, I understand. I mean, forget the fact that it was me talking, but you know what I mean? Like to see it sort of in this, Americanized lens, it really felt special, and it really felt like, kind of like you belong. Now it's different. And, you see South Asians on TV and in the movies and everything, but years ago that wasn't the case. And it's just this really like proud moment of like, oh my God, identity. Hey, look at that, So,
it's amazing though, right?
Yeah.
And you were a part of it. And that's the thing, is that your magazine and you were a part of that, of bringing that into kind of a normalized world and allowing people to have a window into that, because again, it's not the Bollywood magazine, it's not the Bollywood movie. That's not how it all works. And so, to being able to have a window into how things actually work and the options that are available for people is amazing. I mean,
it's totally amazing. And the best part about being part of the wedding industry is that you get to meet, just so many like cool people like yourself, like Marcy, like how I ran into her,
right.
Just I'm with the NAWP here in Miami-Dade, like I'm on their board.
Yeah.
So I'm really meeting like a whole new, like moving to Miami, it's like new. So I'm meeting all these people and everybody has all these great ideas. And I'm just trying to absorb as much as possible, so I can give that to my clients and give them something special, something unique, because as a planner, you're really just a conduit between, what's out there and what your client wants. You're the filter that gives them, something, very special. So yeah, so I'm kind of like, all right, where do I go? What do I learn? Where do I go? What do I learn?
So what's next for you? What's next?
Well, my plan is, not to, I mean, if you don't dream big, right?
Yes.
How are you going to get to where you're going if you don't know where you're going?
Dream big.
Yeah. So you
Yes.
dream, you reach for the sun, and then even if you hit the moon, it's pretty decent, right?
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So my plan, and God, hopefully this will all work out.
Yeah.
But I want to be the planner to all of these houses I see on Fisher Island and Palm Island. It's like I go by there and I look at that and I'm like, I want to do a party in that house and that house and that house and that house. And so my goal is to, sort of, reach a level of my
You're
work
already
and my
there.
reputation.
What
Well,
are you
in New
talking
York
about?
I was, but over here it's like, in New York it's like I didn't have to stand in line for clubs, right? Because everybody knew, but now I have to stand in line, so it's a very humbling experience.
Well, and I can tell
That's
you,
why. See how sad is my life that the barometer of success is: did I make it past the velvet rope, or did I have to wait? Is that terrible?
I love it. No, because I moved to Florida, when I was 32, I had a reimagining of my life and decided to move to Florida. Did it very much the same thing, and it was a brand new experience and having to build up everything. And as somebody that's in weddings, I'm just letting you know, we can talk offline about that, but oh yeah, but as with every location, it has its challenges that you have to just learn, over time, how to best work with the talents that are there. Let me put it that way.
That, and I think we're also in that really weird, post, are we in a pandemic? Are we not? Do we mask? Do we not mask? Right. So, that challenge has been, in and itself has been, just like, holy moly. Like I had a wedding in January that was supposed to be about 200 people. Right. And it topped out at 40 people. And in 2 weeks, and I kid you not, in 2 weeks, I changed all the venues, changed it was like basically planning a brand new wedding. Yeah. And because it was only 40 people, we didn't need these big grand halls anymore. Right. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's with anything, it's like, you just, it drives you, keep going, don't mess up. Hopefully nobody will notice,
No, you're doing amazing. And like, that's our hour. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I know. That's what I told you. It goes by so fast.
I just want to like take you out now and just hang out with you and just like talk all night long.
I love it. I love it. You've been amazing. I can't thank you enough for being on the show and opening our eyes a little bit to all of like the minute. I mean, there's just so many details. So if you're out there and you're wanting to plan an Indian wedding or a South Asian wedding, or you want to just have more information and you want to go and volunteer, reach out to her. Because she's lovely. I'm telling you guys, she's lovely. Not just on camera, but behind the scenes too. So thank you so much for being on Behind the Veil.
You are so awesome, Keith. I'm sorry Marcy's not here, but hopefully everything will be cool.
She'll be back next week.
You are so much fun. I literally just want to like hang out with you forever.
I say that to my husband. Anyway. All right. So we'll see everybody next Tuesday at 2:00. But for now, we're going to say goodbye.
Bye.